Hello, all. Welcome. Today we have a special guest with us, Vikram Srinivasan, founder of Needl.ai and adjunct professor at IISc Bangalore. And welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Paresh, for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to be on this show.
Cool, awesome. So we wanted to discuss like there is a lot of buzz around GenAI right now, right? And every
Mm,
other organization in talking about the same. At the
mm,
same time, there are a lot of challenges as well to implement a GenAI strategy for a
mm,
specific use case of a enterprise or a startup or a
mhm,
digital native for that matter. So,
mhm.
what is your opinion on the same?
Yeah, so I think generative AI has a lot of potential and impact. It's probably one of the biggest breakthrough technologies we have had in over a decade. And the promise is because it can unlock a lot of productivity, right? So there are the obvious use cases, for example, GitHub Copilot, where a developer can become way more productive by using GitHub Copilot. There are cases for sales and marketing where they can become more productive in their content writing by using ChatGPT and stuff. But I think from an enterprise use case point of view, what is most exciting is the fact that you can unlock the value of data that resides in the enterprise across various silos. Today, a lot of that data is what I'd call dark data, which is not easily unearthable and exploitable by users. That is one problem. It's all sitting in silos across various systems and platforms. Second, the ability to interact with those data sources requires a lot of expertise, right? So it's not easy, for example, for a C-level person to quickly ask questions about what's going on with their business and get answers out of it, right? How you interact with a chat interface, you want to be able to interact with data similarly so that you can get answers quickly. Typically, what happens in enterprises is there are a lot of these BI teams, analytics teams, and ad hoc query comes. You go, some expert goes and writes a complex SQL query, gets the answer out of it, feeds it back to the CXO, and that those time cycles are just way too huge. What you want is an interface where you can talk to the data and get the answers you need very quickly. And GenAI has the potential to unlock those kinds of productivity gains where data is at the fingertips of everyone in the organization.
I totally understand it coming from a database world, right? So, like, I
Right.
see enterprises where data is locked
Mm,
in the legacy systems. It's very
mm,
difficult to unearth insights out of it, right? So,
yeah.
and you talked about some of these use cases, right? So, like,
Mm,
if you go to say insurance industry, it might be claim processing. In
mm,
healthcare, it might be drug discovery,
mm,
algorithmic trading in finance, right? Customer
mm,
chatbots in telcos and e-commerce, right? So,
yeah.
if we can dive one level deeper, so if you
Mm,
can take one use case and tell like what are those real challenges when uh, an enterprise or a digital native has to kind of build some gen AI based application, right, on
mm.
some of these use cases, right? So that would be really helpful.
Sure, sure. So let's first divide data that resides in an organization into two kinds of data, right? There is what are called structured data and there is unstructured data. So structured data is anything that resides in rows and columns, resides in traditional databases that are there in the organization. It could be, sales, revenue numbers. In a retail organization, for example, it could be the point of POS terminals at different stores, how much sales they're making on which items, etc., which resides in rows and columns. And second kind of data could be, for example, what we call unstructured data. So unstructured data could be residing in all kinds of knowledge bases. When I say unstructured data, it's just, in the form of free flowing text like emails, stuff that's residing in your drive, stuff that's residing in your note taking applications, chats, etc. Now, there is a lot of, in those use cases also, in those scenarios also, there is a lot of institutional memory and knowledge that's built in the organization, but it is siloed. So, the first key challenge of sort of making generative AI useful across organizations is the ability to centralize all of this information into a single repository. Because unless you have a single repository over which you're processing or smart intelligence layer is operating, you will not be able to get any intelligence. This data will continue to be dark, what I call dark data, data that you cannot extract intelligence from. Now, that in itself is actually a very hard and very challenging problem, even before you come to the generative AI aspect of it. So, how do you sort of build large scale systems that can aggregate your data across these very diverse kinds of data sources, right? Structured data, unstructured data, PDFs, images, emails, text. How do you get all of that into a central repository? That is challenge number one. Challenge number two is, even if I want to make the generative AI work on top of this, how do you do this in a way that preserves privacy, right? So you might have all kinds of data access rules within your organization. You might not want emails that have come from a CEO to leak to, say, some other member of the organization. So there are all these kinds of challenges. So how do you make generative AI work without any of this information leaking um, to people in the organization who should not have access to it? Third is the challenge of what's called hallucinations. Generative AI has this problem of what is called hallucinations, where it can actually make up information or cook up information. In a business or enterprise kind of scenario where business critical decisions are being made, which can have impact of millions or billions of dollars, how do you make sure that the answers spewed out by this chat interface that you have is actually factual and accurate, right? And finally, while all this sounds exciting, how do you make this work at scale in a cost efficient manner? Because you don't want to be spending billions of dollars or even millions of dollars in implementing such solutions, which is not cost effective. You might as well have those human experts going and digging out the information. So these are the challenges that we see in terms of implementing generative AI solutions within organizations.
Great. I mean, thanks for listing all these challenges in such a concise way. So, and while talking about these, right, one of the thing which is very popular right now is RAG, right? So, retrieval
Right.
augmented generation. Uh,
Exactly.
Users combines the strengths of both retrieval and generative based
Yeah.
AI models, right?
Yeah.
So, can you kind of tell us, right? So, a high level overview of how this RAG architecture works, right? So, what
Yeah.
are the specific considerations on the same?
Sure. So let's take a step back. I know RAG, retrieval augmented generation, all sound like very new age, buzzy terminology. So let's take a step back and first let me break down what RAG means, right? So all of us understand search at the end of the day, right? So the first word that you see there, retrieval, is actually nothing but a good search engine under the hood. Okay, that's all it is. So as long as you can build a good search engine under the hood, then you've got the retrieval piece. Now, what the generative piece does essentially is it is augmenting the search results, right? That's why it's called retrieval augmented generation. So what it does is it takes your search results that are coming in, exactly like the 10 blue links that you get out of a Google search, looks at what those results are, and the generative part tries to summarize the answer relative to the question over those top 10 blue links, for example. That exactly is what RAG is. So, from a user perspective, instead of having those 10 blue links that come from a Google search result or an enterprise search result, where you have to click through each of them and understand what is going on, what the RAG does for you is it reads through all those 10 top blue results and summarizes the answer for you. So, as a human, you are able to consume it quickly, right? That's the first benefit of retrieval augmented generation, which is essentially a much smarter search than what you have today, right? The second piece to what RAG does is it allows you to deal with some of these problems of hallucinations, because when the generative part summarizes these answers for you, it also gives you citations and references to where each of the answers came from, and you can also factually verify it. So the advantage of these RAG systems is that it sort of eliminates the hallucinations. Even in the off chance if there's a hallucination, because it gives you a citation and reference, you can go and check and verify whether the answer is accurate. right? So that at a high level, that is all a retrieval augmented generation is. Yeah. So the RAG architecture consists of three parts, right? First is a data store in which you have all the data that is there across the organization. So you need to suck it into a centralized data store. Now, for this centralized data store, you have a variety of options. It could be what is called a vector database, right? That is option number one. You could use, if you're looking at structured data, you could look at traditional relational databases. You could also look at knowledge graphs. Third, you could, for unstructured data, you could also use traditional search engines like an Elasticsearch or a Solr.
So this is great, right? So I mean, we
Mm,
understood like
mm,
what RAG is and how
mm.
the architecture looks like in a nutshell.
Yeah,
Right? You talked about some of these things,
yeah,
challenges,
yeah,
a high-level solution for the same, right?
yeah.
What Needle AI doing in this space, and how the your solution is unique.
Sure, sure. So, Needl.ai is a platform that tries to unlock enterprise information intelligence. At this point of time, we are focusing mostly on unstructured data. When I say unstructured data, stuff that's in the form of text, images, in PDF documents, Word documents, so on and so forth. And what we do is we bring together three types of data sources, all your enterprise applications. This could include your emails, chat applications, note taking applications, drives, CRM tools, so on and so forth. Information coming from public sources, your news sites, blog sites, YouTube channels, podcasts, so on and so forth. And information coming from the regulatory sources like SEC, Bombay Stock Exchange, so on and so forth. So we are the only solution out there that can bring together all these three different types of data sources, and we have a variety of AI assisted tools which unlocks enterprise information intelligence. So one piece of it is, for example, this RAG architecture, which allows people to ask questions of their data irrespective of where it resides and get answers to them, right? So that is one thing we do. We also do other kinds of information intelligence like summarization. We allow you to create alerts on specific types of events so that you get alerted on top of them. And we are the only solution that can operate at petabyte scale and still do all of this very efficiently.
Thanks for that
Mm,
intro, Vikram.
mm,
The key takeaway in this entire session was we talked about
mm,
GenAI, how important is GenAI strategy. At the
mm,
same time, the challenge that
mm,
even though you have those all those fancy algorithms and
mm,
models, if you
mm.
don't have the right data infrastructure, you talked
Yeah,
about dark data, so
yeah,
everything goes for a toss, right?
yeah.
So in our next episode, let us
Mm,
deep dive on that data infrastructure. What is that data infrastructure needed to support these GenAI initiatives?
sure.
Thank you, Vikram, for making it.
Thank you, Paresh.